Welcome along this Friday evening to the state of Scottish football. You've got the tag team here. It's me and Dave on a Friday night, taking you through another weekend preview of cinch competitive action. On the day when Morton sell the naming rights to their stadium of Capello, and also Ryan Giggs is discovered to be the best poet since Alfred Boe. Dave, we have a lot of football to look forward to this weekend.
Yeah, the priority for us, Colin, is the cinch, well, not just the cinch Premiership, cinch. Let's speak about cinch for the next hour.
We are cinched after here on the state of Scottish football, and we hope you are too. Get involved in the comment section. Give us your score predictions. We'll take you through each of the 6 games that's happening in the Scottish Premiership this weekend, or the cinch Premiership as we call it. Just like Patrick James Simpson has done here. Good evening, lads. Good evening to you, Patrick. Let us know your predictions for the games coming up. First of all, though, Dave, let's take a look back at last night's action in the Europa League. We had Hearts away to FC Zurich. A 2-1 defeat for Hearts, but on the balance of play, in terms of the tie, I would say Hearts very much still in it.
Oh, very much so. I mean, it was a balanceable game. I mean, Hearts took the lead for a Shanklin penalty, and it was controversial. I thoroughly agree with that. It was very much controversial, but I mean, I was making a point in another show before I came on here. That's how much I love you, Colin. Irrespective if it's a penalty or not, if that means something next Friday morning in Hearts and Europa League, nobody's caring one jot about whether it's a soft penalty, no penalty, whatever have you. So fair play to Shanklin for tucking it away. And I thought it was a very good penalty. He tucked it away right.
Very good penalty, straight into the side netting. Very good penalty.
Goalkeeper dived, and the fact that Shanklin's tucked it right into that bottom left corner speaks volumes about the quality of penalty that Shanklin possessed. But Craig Order also had some very good saves. But I mean, Zurich came into the game after Hearts equalised. I think that was the wake-up call that Zurich required. And obviously, a fantastic strike to make it 2-1. If that was a really good strike. And what I find about Zurich is I think they try to exploit Hearts every possible opportunity. What I mean when I say that is they always seem to get into good areas, and they knew about the quality of goalkeeper that Craig Gordon is. They didn't exactly go for low-tame shots. They went for powerful efforts. And Craig Gordon, because of the rain, because of obviously the quality of shots that were getting faced against him, he was always good at palming them or parrying them, and it was very, very rarely that he was saving them first hand. And that was a useful tactic from a Zurich point of view. But also, Craig Gordon has some fantastic saves in the game and kept the score well below what possibly could have been. So from a Hearts point of view, very, very positive. And obviously a big tie awaits them next week at Tynecastle. It's going to be a full out Tynecastle. The atmosphere is going to be electric. The Gorgish side of Edinburgh, there won't be a light switched on apart from Tynecastle. And it'll be a very big night for those associated with Hearts.
Absolutely, and obviously Hearts weren't helped by the fact that Craig Halkett had to go off injured after a couple of minutes. When you get your sort of first choice centre half going off, that does sort of ruin the plans. But as you say, they take the lead after the penalty, which both you and James McFadden are insistent is a controversial one, although to me it looked a bit of a stone waller. If it was definitely my team, I'd be screaming for it. Then you've got the 2 quick goals from Zurich, and that's a killer blow. I mean, I've seen it happen umpteen times for Celtic in Europe, where we've maybe went a goal or 2 up, and then the next minute we've conceded 2 in the space of 3-4 minutes, or the game's back open again, and it is an absolute killer. And I don't know if it is a thing to do with the Scottish football mentality, whether it's just a lack of experience or what it is, but I mean, if you've switched off after you've conceded that first one, you're going to concede a second one straight away. And that's exactly what Hearts done last night. They had to regroup. They had to try and get themselves back into the game, play the football they've been playing, because they looked very comfortable for those first 15-20 minutes, and then they sort of threw it away. But thankfully, for their sakes anyway, the second half, they kind of kept it tight. They didn't concede any more, and they've kept themselves in the tie ahead of, as you say, what will be an electric game at Tynecastle next week. Some more comments coming in. Robbie Hanratty, who we'll see back here on the show very soon. 2 fine gentlemen. Thank you very much, Robbie. That 20 quid's in the post. Liam Collo comes in giving his prediction for the Hibs Rangers game. Hibs 6, Rangers 2. We'll cover that one shortly, but if that's the case, I'm sure it'll be a cracking game. And Brown Warrior coming in to say Dave's definitely been on the health kick. He's looking fighting fit this season. I tell you, you want to see some of the pictures he puts in our group chat. It's always him pumping the iron late at night. But look, as you said, still sort of in the tie. They've got a chance to take it back to Tynecastle. They know exactly what they've got to do next Thursday night. And to be honest, if I was a betting man, I think I'd put my money on Hearts being in that draw on Friday afternoon for the Europa League.
Yeah, I think a couple of Achilles heels before I go into the positives. I think the Achilles heel from a Hearts point of view is the fact that maybe don't have a lot of options defensively. I mean, Halkett, as you've rightly alluded to, went off after 4 minutes last night, and with the exception of Civic, you've not got a lot of options on the bench last night. Or you've not got a lot of options on the bench, beg your pardon. I mean, all the options were forward areas or midfielders that were available to Hearts, and that's where maybe the Hearts are lacking. But positively, they've got a lot of options in the forward areas. They've obviously got a good compact team, obviously back through Craig Gordon, and obviously they've got a very good defensive line, which always helps. Aside, especially in European terms, and it's going to be a different post position at Tynecastle next week. Obviously, midfield-wise, they're waiting for Beningame to come back, but they're still looking very, very strong midfield. And then Shankland's started life at Tynecastle very, very well. That's 3 goals in 3 games. That's some going. A lot of people doubted him when they launched Shankland sitting on the Hearts, but he started his tenure at Tynecastle very, very well. Yes, it was a penalty last night, but you look at the quality of goals he's scoring as well. Hibs goal, that was a great through ball, and Shankland just tucks it away. He also scored against Dundee United, which was a bit more easier, but it was after 2 minutes, and that was about getting your striding immediately. And then obviously scores a penalty with a well-struck spot kick last night. So the goals he's scoring, his quality, it's not just because he's scoring goals, it's the quality of goals he's scoring as well. When you look at the contest, maybe Hearts need a bit more physicality in the middle. They do need, when you see Zurich in action last night, they were aggressive, they were not arrogant, but they did have that a little bit of, I don't think desire's the right word, but they did have a little bit more, they were a little bit more streetwise, just in terms of how they wanted to approach the game, how they wanted to get in Hearts' spaces. And that's maybe something Hearts will have to sort out and rectify before next week. But apart from that, it's all positive, and Hearts can get into that game on the front foot, get into good areas. I think Barry Mackay in particular, I'm going to single him out. I think he's going to be a big player for Hearts. I think he's a player that can go and expose his Zurich defenders at every possible opportunity. And if him and Shankland are on fire, God knows what happens.
I think as well, we always speak about if any team goes to play Livingston, when they come up on that plastic pitch, it's always a leveller. But when you go to Tynecastle and you've got the proximity of the stands and the fans literally right on top of the pitch and the atmosphere that they can create there, for me, that's another man on the park. That is a leveller as well. So if you're coming up against a tough opposition, having that fan base behind you can really urge you on. And I think that'll be the case on Thursday when it comes to Tynecastle. I think it'll be absolutely packed out around Gorgie, and they should just about have enough to get the job done. Obviously, the away goals not coming into it means that Hearts can play with a bit of freedom and just go out and attack. And I think that looking at that Hearts side, as you say, defensively not great, but their best options are going forward, and you've got to make the most of your kind of strengths. So, interestingly though, there's still a game that they've got to play before that, and that is on Sunday at Parkhead against the reigning champions Celtic. So, just before we go into that one, the betting odds, if you are going to bet, obviously bet safely, bet responsibly. But Celtic 1-5, the draw is 6-1, and Hearts are 12-1. Now, I don't know how much of that, Dave, is on the fact that we could potentially see Hearts put out a bit of a weakened side against Celtic on Sunday, and how much of that's actually got to do with the start that Celtic have had. So, what do you think? Do you think, considering the kind of injury picked up last night, that Robbie Neilson will take a look at this game on Sunday and think guys like Mackay, guys like Shankland, will maybe just leave them on the bench?
Same doing that, but I don't think it would be, if I was in Robbie Neilson's shoes, it wouldn't be the mentality I'd be having. I'll be perfectly honest with you on that front. I mean, Yeah, I mean, the bread and butter is European football for Hearts. They achieved that last season and achieved it with distinction. I think they've got to do exactly the same again this season. I think they've got to be winning the big games, and I'm not saying that they'll win on Sunday, not by any stretch of imagination. It's going to be a tough game, and obviously Celtic away, it's never easy for opposition sides. And Ange Postecoglou has the pleasure and the reality and the luxury of resting players, and they'll can obviously adapt and equip their training time a lot differently than what Hearts have done. Obviously, Hearts trained at Rickerton on Wednesday and then travelled over primarily for media requirements, is my understanding of it. That just goes to show you where both teams are at, where Hearts are looking at this by saying that they have to look at what they're doing, how they're going to set up, and all that kind of stuff. I do think they will make some changes. I can see Lewis Nielsen starting on Sunday. I can see Janelli getting a start. I could see maybe Liam Boyce getting a start. I could see Shankland on the bench. I do agree with you on that front. Defensively is the big question for me, because Graham Duffy raised the point about benching Peter Harum, which I can understand where he's coming from. But at the same time as well, I don't think there's enough to justify benching somebody like Peter Harum and at the same time risking a potential thumping, because it could end up being that. If you end up benching far too many players or far too many senior figures, it could end up having big consequences on the team. So for me, I'd be making 3 or 4 changes. Probably, if you were to play Andy Halliday, I know exactly what would happen with Andy Halliday in Celtic Park, because there's good symptoms with that. But Andy Halliday, getting snapped in half by Carl McGregor in 5 minutes, and every Hearts fan going, "What have we just done here?" So, big questions.
I don't necessarily see Callum McGregor being that type of player, but I can see the fan reaction for sure. Let's concentrate on the champions just for this next couple of minutes. The recent press conference from Ange Postecoglou confirmed that Rio Hatate and Alexander Bernabei will both be fit and available to play this game on Sunday. The only player still missing from the Celtic squad is Yusuke Ideguchi. As we say earlier on, Dave, Celtic have got a strength and depth that is an embarrassment across this league, that they can turn to so many different players. And Ange has done really well over the first 3 games of the season so far to kind of get the most out of all the players. We're seeing goals coming from all over the park, especially from the centre-halves. We're also seeing goals from Kyogo. Giakoumakis scored that fantastic overhead kick the other day. And it looks as if Celtic aren't quite done there yet. And a deal is basically almost done for Said Haksabanovic, the left-sided forward from Rubin Kazan. The talk is that he is currently in London undergoing a medical ahead of a permanent transfer to the champions. Dave, it's ridiculous when you compare this Celtic team to where they were 12 months ago and how much they've actually developed since then.
Yeah, I was making the point to somebody about Morris Jens, just to start things off here. He's a player that, when you look at it from an opposition point of view, when you look at it from a Scottish football perspective, a lot of people will put Morris Jens on the radar, just in terms of the way he plays, the goals he'll score, the fact that he's a threat in both boxes. He's a player that goes under the radar until probably Sunday past there, where, he went to Ross County, scored a decisive goal, which could be pivotal come the end of the season, and it scores that overhead kick against Kilmarnock. Yes, the goalkeeper maybe could have done a little bit better, but still, the accuracy, the precision in that kick can't be undermined as far as I'm concerned. And Celtic were very, very much in full stride last Sunday, and Kilmarnock didn't really lay above them. Yet McCress was antagonised by the outcome, and that's how poor Kilmarnock were. And not only that, Colin, the fact that it was 5 different scorers on Sunday. I'm just checking my notes. Yeah, it was 5 different scorers on Sunday, which goes to show you the quality that there is in the Celtic side at this precise moment in time. And I mean, with other additions coming in, it's going to be interesting. But shows that there's quality, but there's going to be even more quality down the line. And Ange Postecoglou is renowned for signing good players that maybe aren't in the market of other clubs or other other people don't recognise on a regular basis. So I think that's very positive for Ange Postecoglou. It's a strong asset for Celtic fans to have. But I'll ask you the question, being a Celtic fan, Colin, if you bring in the striker, does that mean Giacomakis or whatever have you is out the door, or do you think Celtic are going to go and lead the line with 3 strikers? What do you think is going to be the...
No, I think they'll go with 3 strikers. I think another striker coming in would see the end of Albion Ajeti at Celtic. I think there has been talks about him trying to move on and getting him off the wage bill. It's just a deal that's not really worked for him since he's moved up to Celtic. I still think he's been a half decent addition to the squad when he's been ready and available and fit, but that's been few and far between. So probably best for both parties just to come to a compromise and kind of move on from there. And I do think if we do add another striker in, then it will be to complement the 2 that we've got already, because you've seen what happened when both Giacomakis and Kyogo were injured last season. We were playing Maeda through the middle, we played Abada through the middle, and the 2 of them, as much as they can play in that position, didn't really have the quality of both aforementioned strikers. So it'd just be good to make sure that we've got that strength and depth, especially when you've got the finances to do so. If you've got it, then you've got to give it a go.
What I would say is I thought Maeda alongside Kyogo, I thought Ange Postecoglou got the system spot on Sunday, just where Maeda playing a wider role and allowed him to expose Kilmarnock defenders at any possible opportunity, allowed him to get to wee pockets, and the Kilmarnock backline just didn't stand a chance. I mean, when it's Kyogo against Ash Taylor, it's a foregone conclusion, and any Aberdeen fan that's listening in will thoroughly agree with what I'm saying about this. But when it's those players, when it's Maeda, when it's Kyogo, when it's the lineup in which they did it with, it was a 4-3-3. And when they play like that, they're a feisty team to watch. Feisty in a good way, I may add. They've obviously got Jota on one side, they've got Maeda on one side and the other. And Maeda's very, very good for being that left-sided type of forward. He's not really good. It's good in the middle. He's good in terms of getting into good areas and getting good balls in the area, but also having his own impact in the game. And Jota was exactly the same. And I did question the goalkeeper for Jota's sudden strike, but in terms of positioning, but irrespective, Jota and the fact that he's banging in those type of goals shows the quality he has. I'll argue with you, Colin. I think Jota is twice the player he was last season at Celtic.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's now got a permanent home. He knows that he's got a team he's going to impress. He's playing European football. He knows he's that number 1 jersey. And it's time for Jota to be Jota. And you see that in the clips of when he was coming through the Benfica Youth Academy and the times that he was getting on the park for sort of Benfica's B team and stuff like that. When he felt as if he was at home, it's when he played his best football. When you're on loan at a team, yeah, you want to impress, but in the same sense, you also don't want to get heavily injured, especially when your future's up in the air. So it does look as if he's had that time out this summer. He's come back, he's refreshed. He suits the style of football that Ange Postecoglou wants to play. He's got, 4 assists and 2 goals in his first 3 games. His goal return record is phenomenal. So, and he still managed to miss a sitter on Sunday. So there's still more to come out of him as far as I'm concerned. And he's definitely the first name on the team sheet for me. But we do have to get to the predictions because we are nearly 20 minutes in already and we've only covered the first game. I think it's one of these ones where normally I would be a bit kind of nervy going into this one because Hearts tend to do fairly well against Celtic, but I have a feeling they may rest a couple of players and I don't think this is the game that is necessarily on their minds. I'm going to go with Celtic to win 3-0.
I'll go one short and go 2-0.
2-0 to Celtic. Let us know your predictions. Scott Howe coming in here saying 5-1 to Celtic. Patrick James Simpson, Boyce to score first for Hearts. Nervy 1-1 half-time, Celtic 3-1 full-time. Michael McDonald agreeing with Scott Howe, 5-1 to the Hoops. And Joseph McGonigal saying 3-1 Celtic. Yeah, do you know what? I don't really know about his conceding as such, but we'll take a look at it. We'll see how it goes. Let's move across to the capital, though, and the first game of the Cinch Premiership weekend, which is the tie at Easter Road between Hibs and Rangers. Rangers coming off the game, coming off the back of the 2-each draw at home with PSV Eindhoven on Tuesday night. A pretty solid performance all round. Bet that I'm slightly disappointed to concede quite late on so that they didn't have a lead to take over to Eindhoven. But all in all, I'd say they're still in the tie. Livingston coming off the back of that 2-1 defeat, which we spoke about quite openly on this show last week with Craig and with Greg about how we thought Hibs were going to struggle physically against Livingston, and so be it. But do you know what? This is another one that's very difficult to call. Hibs really need to get their season going, Dave. They've not started well at all. Rangers have the chance of potentially getting this 30 to 40 million pound cash jackpot of making the Champions League this season. What do you do if you're Giovanni Van Bronckhorst going into this tie? This is traditionally a difficult trip over to Easter Road. But for me, if I was a fan, I would be saying that the game on Wednesday night is far more important.
Financially, it is. When you look at the game tomorrow, there's going to be plenty of slip-ups in the season. Celtic will slip up in games, Rangers will slip up in games. Yes, as you rightly alluded to earlier on, the difference in quality, the difference in resources, finances between the Glasgow 2 and the rest of the league is of a different proximity altogether. But at the same time, Celtic and Rangers will go to your Paradises, your Easter Roads, your Fir Parks, your Rugby Parks, and slip up. So it's an important game in that aspect, but in the same token as well, I do agree with you that Wednesday is a far bigger assignment than tomorrow lunchtime will be. And there's obviously a lot more riding on Wednesday financially for Rangers. So it's going to be an interesting one. I do think Giovanni will make changes. I'd love to, well, obviously I'm not a Rangers fan, but from a Rangers perspective, I think it would be good to see Morelos play, just to see what he's like under Van Bronckhorst since the return of the season, because obviously he's been playing Kovac a lot recently. Kovac just hit the ground running, and I made the point in this show on Wednesday actually. I made a say a Scottish curveball by saying I thought Kovac has been better than Morelos so far this season, and when you look at the Rangers lineup, I mean, I think defence is a big question for me tomorrow, because with Goldson and Sands, also there's been a lot of chat about Leon Balogun, but it's going to be interesting to see if they maintain that back four. Barisic and Tavernier, I think, as far as I'm concerned, are mainstays. I think the big question for me, if I was Van Bronckhorst, would be, do you play Tavernier tomorrow? Because for me, Tavernier is an accomplished figure in this Rangers side. He's probably the most important player when it comes to, most notably, being the captain of the club, but also alongside that, just the valuable contribution he gives to Rangers on a consistent basis. Lundstrom, Davis and Lawrence was the midfield three on Tuesday. I could see him changing that about. I could see Arthur perhaps starting. Ryan Jack was on the bench on Tuesday. I could see him coming in and making a start. Probably Sakala, I could see maybe getting a look in. Scott Wright, I could see him potentially getting a start Easter tomorrow. I think this is the perfect game for Scott Wright to an extent, just to get him making an impression upon Van Bronckhorst, because he did that in the Scottish Cup final against Hearts last season, where he came on, made an impact, and Scott Wright was a massive player for Van Bronckhorst last season in the tail end, and I think he'd be a big player for Rangers when called upon. He obviously came on Tuesday and didn't have the same impact, but I think he needs a good run of games, Scott Wright, and this is an opportunity, perfect opportunity in order for him to go and do that. So I think there will be changes. I'll be just to see if Tillman and Kent plays, because especially for Tillman, he started the season very, very well. I think Ryan Kent has to start tomorrow, if I'm going to put it honest, because Ryan Kent still has a lot of proving to do. Now, when you look at it, I do think Rangers will still have enough to go and win the game, but I'm going to look at this on the other side, and Ryan Porteous, I'm going to single him out here. He's renowned for high controversy in these types of games.
Especially against Alfredo Morelos.
Well, exactly. You had that instinct at Ibrox last season. You had an instinct at Stevie Gerrard when he was obviously the Rangers manager. He's renowned for winding up the Rangers players, and it's going to be an interesting one tomorrow if he starts against whoever the Rangers attacker is. And you touched on Morelos there. Obviously, Morelos was getting wound up if it was against Morelos, just because obviously he was always told before the game, Scott McKenna, to go and wind up and Morelos, because Morelos was renowned for whenever he was getting wound up, that he would always crumble and retaliate at opponents, and that'll be the game plan tomorrow by Lee Johnson, I'm presuming.
Well, I mean, I don't know if Lee Johnson's actually managed the game plan since he's came back, but someone you haven't quite mentioned yet, and I think will have a sort of big impact on the game tomorrow, is Martin Boyle, obviously making that move back to Easter Road from Qatar, and he did hit the ground running, obviously, in the the Edinburgh Derby when he came off the bench. Not so much of an impact against Livingston last week, but he does tend to bring himself up for these big games. And certainly, if you take a look back to last season, he was very influential in that Betfred Cup semi-final at Hampden. So I think when you look at it, he's going to be playing probably Martin Boyle up front alongside. I'm trying to think who would be up there alongside him. Christian Deutsch, perhaps.
Is it Milkerson?
It could be Milkerson. It could be Johan. There's a few players there, but I mean, I'm looking at the midfield, and the midfield I think will be where that game's won. You're talking about Rangers potentially bringing in players like Kamara and and Jack and stuff like that. Kenny in the midfield for Hibs. He's been a fairly decent addition. Playing alongside Joel Newell, I don't think is a strong enough midfield. I think they will have to tighten that up a wee bit in there, and that'll then give the kind of freedom for someone like Martin Boyle to get forward to sort of create a bit of problem, depending on, as we said, what Rangers defence is playing. You mentioned there James Sands. I think he's someone who really hasn't settled in alongside Connor Goldson this season. I think they'll probably, if they can, bring in another centre-half. You mentioned Leon Balogun there. The guy's still a free agent after leaving at the end of last season. It would be no surprise to see him back at Ibrox before the transfer window closes. And Ryan Porteous as well. I mean, he's a very hot-headed player, but he always kind of loves these games. You saw him react at the semi-final last year. You've seen him react at Easter Road and that before. So this one's got it's got box office written all over it in terms of atmosphere, in terms of excitement, but it could be, we could be saying that and it could end up a boring 0-0. I just don't know how this one's going to go. If you are looking to put a bet on this one, and as always, gamble responsibly, Hibs are 9-2, the draw is 3-1, and Rangers are 3-5. So for me, I think the tasty one there could be potentially the draw. Just one more before we go and give our predictions here, Dave. I was listening to another podcast this week, and it's a phone-in, a very well-known West Coast phone-in. And I heard some Rangers fans coming on and speaking about the goalkeeper situation at Rangers. A couple of fans not over necessarily happy with the performances of John McLaughlin so far this season. Others thinking that it's time that Alan McGregor moved on. He's past it, and potentially they should look for another goalkeeper before the end of the transfer window. Do you think that's fair on John McLaughlin, considering he's still trying to put his stamp on that position? I mean, he's waited long enough to be given this opportunity.
I mean, Alan McGregor, Stefan Klos, your great Rangers goalkeeper, Andy Goran, God bless him. Your great Rangers goalkeepers have all had errors in their lifetime at playing for the club, and John McLaughlin have been no different. He's had big mistakes before and bounced back from them. Obviously, John McLaughlin's an established goalkeeper in the Scottish game and has done tremendously well for both Hearts and Rangers. Just remember here, had it not been for a shot from a PSV player, I forgot which one it was now, but that would have been PSV winning the game, heading into the game at the Phillips Stadion on Wednesday. Same with USG. If USG go and make it 3-0 in the first leg a few weeks ago, I think that ties over as far as I'm concerned. And the Rangers are speaking about being in the Europa League. It's fine margins as far as football is concerned. And John McLaughlin has made sure the Rangers are still in this specific moment preparing for a potential windfall. So he's an established number one. And I think he's ready to be taking over Al McGregor's Rangers number one. Now, McGregor's not ready to leave the club yet, but if I was Van Bronckhorst, I would maybe have Al McGregor in the background role and then taking another goalkeeper. But obviously, I'm not involved with that club, and time will tell.
Time will tell, indeed. So we're looking for predictions now. Joseph McGonigal comes in to say 2 each. Jonathan Brown comes in to say the Hibs to win 2-1 with Boyle to get a brace. Patrick James Simpson reckons it'll be 2-1 Rangers and they'll get a penalty after 5 minutes. And Scott Howe gives it 2 each at Easter Road. I'm going to go with 1 each tomorrow. I think there'll be goals in it. I think it'll be a tasty game. I think there'll be a lot of stop-start fouls. And I also think Rangers will rest quite a few players ahead of this game on Wednesday night, this sort of massive Champions League qualifier. Hibs, they don't tend to take losing very well at Easter Road, so I think they'll be fired right up for this one. It's probably a few players' last chance to impress Lee Johnson before he maybe moves them on, so I'm going to go for 1-each draw for this one.
I'm going to be, I was thinking about Hibs winning actually, but I'm going to go 2-1 Rangers.
2-1 Rangers. Do you know, I could see that happening as well, to be perfectly honest. I don't think Hibs have had a great start to the season. So we're 2 games in, we're almost half an hour in, but thank you to everyone who has joined us so far. We do have 4 other games to cover in the Cinch Premiership, and the first one of those is going to be between 2 of the form teams in the league so far. It is down to Fir Park for Motherwell versus Livingston. The odds on this one, if you're putting this one on the coupon, 11-8 for Motherwell, 2-1 for the draw, 23-10 for Livingston. When you look at this one, Dave, Motherwell we spoke about a couple of weeks ago is maybe one of the favourites to go down. They've had a fairly decent start overall in terms of the season, bouncing back from that humiliating result against Sligo Rovers. And Livingston, they're just showing that they can keep picking up these points, and it's one of these reasons why even if there was a zombie apocalypse or a nuclear holocaust, then Livingston would still find themselves in the Cinch Premiership.
I think it's an intriguing game with Fir Park tomorrow, Colin, because you've got a Motherwell side you rightly allude to that were favourites upon many to go down this season, but 2 wins out of 3 is some going. A 1-0 win over a struggling St Mirren at the time. Obviously had a disappointing outcome against St Johnstone, but take all things into consideration. That was a late winner by Stevie May, not going to win the game for Carl Davidson's side. And then nobody's seen Motherwell going to be told on Saturday winning. Yeah, Aberdeen were disappointing, and Jim Goodwin pulled no punches in his post-match interviews. But Motherwell got the job done. And I think you're seeing a different cross position altogether with Stevie Hamilton's Motherwell side. They're obviously playing a lot more organisation about their play. But Vean was like Ruud van Nistelrooy when he plays Aberdeen. He's diligent, he's in space, he exposes Aberdeen defenders. There was a lot of questions raised about the Aberdeen defence, but I'll get onto that later on in the show because obviously we want to focus on Motherwell. But for Motherwell, this is a terrific opportunity to build on what they've achieved so far this season. If they can get 3 wins out of 4, that's arguably European form at this stage of the season. Now, I'm not saying for 1 minute Motherwell will be in European football come the end of the season because there's still many twists and roundabouts to come. But in terms of Motherwell, they started this season expertly. Slattery's done very, very well. Scored a really, really good goal to Tawdry last weekend. Whereas Spill, he's done a really, really good sign for Motherwell. He took his goal very, very well. It was a good ball, and Spill just tucked it away. That was pretty good. That's just to say how sober I was last weekend when I'm giving you all this intelligent information, Colin.
Well, clearly one of us had to be because I wasn't. I was at a wedding last weekend, and there was plenty of alcohol to go around. Put it that way. No, you're making some really good points there, and one of the things that I'm looking forward to seeing out of this tie is that sort of physical battle up front between Joe Nubley and Bevis Mugabe. Obviously, Mugabe's got a bit of previous in the league for being sent off for some physical tackles. He loves to get himself in and about the ball. Nubley's shown so far already this season that he's not scared to put himself about there up front, and I think he caused a lot of problems for Hibs last week, and that's how we were saying last Friday we thought Livingston could go and get something at Easter Road, and they certainly did. As you say, this Motherwell team, I mean, a 1-0 victory on the opening day against St Mirren that they probably didn't deserve, a 2-1 defeat against St Johnstone, which they probably didn't deserve, and then a 3-2 win over Aberdeen, which they actually did deserve. So there kind of been the odd goal here and there between the sides in Motherwell, and sometimes it's just a bit of riding your luck when it comes down to that. And I think ahead of this game on Saturday, especially if it being at Fir Park, then I think Motherwell could be doing with the luck continuing to be on their side.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Fir Park has to be a fortress to an extent for Stevie Hamill. It's going to be interesting to see how he goes and evolves things both short term and long term, because the comparison between Robinson and Alexander was Alexander papered over the cracks to an extent. Obviously, they reached European football, and that's a superb accolade for Motherwell. But at the same time as well, he inherited a similar group of players to what Robinson did. The thing for Hamill is he seems to be taking a lot of youth products into the team, but at the same time as well, He's obviously been linked with Snodgrass. He's signed McKinstry from Leeds on loan. I think McKinstry's a really good sign for Motherwell. And if they get Snodgrass in, that's a huge coup for a club of Motherwell's stature. So things on the horizon, positive things on the horizon. It's going to be an interesting time to be a Motherwell fan. Obviously, proof will be the pudding come results, because Motherwell fans are not the most vicious of supporters. I may add, just before Jenna Thompson goes and bullies me, but they are a fan base. When things don't go well, they will be quick to get a manager backs. And for Hamill, he's got off to a good start, and we'll have to continue that moving forward.
It is interesting, the whole Robert Snodgrass thing, because you only have to go back 2 seasons, and then there was the talk of Neil Lennon and the players that he wanted to sign to try and secure 10 in a row for Celtic. And on that list was Robert Snodgrass. So it does show you that he's always been kind of applying for a move back up to Scottish football. He could have been at Celtic a couple of years ago. Now it looks as if he could find his home in Motherwell. I still think there's maybe still a bit of pace to be added to that side. Robert Snodgrass isn't going to add that pace, but if they could just get a quick player, I know Slattery's obviously got a bit of pace behind them, but there's others. I think Jonathan Brown comes in saying Mikey Johnson's still available. I think that would be a great move for them out there at the minute. They could really be doing with some speed in those wide areas, and he could potentially add that in. In terms of Livingston, they have just added the signing of Jack Hamilton today on a free transfer. The goalkeeper moves from Greenock Morton to Livingston after having 12 clean sheets for the Ton last season. I think that's a good backup goalkeeper. He's been in and about the league. I think Morton picked him up from Dundee, Dave, a couple of seasons ago. So it's a fairly decent move for Livingston getting a backup goalkeeper in. They've had a fairly decent start to the season as well, and this one for me is very difficult to call. Motherwell are riding the luck, and Livingston are playing probably to the standard I'd expect to see them play this season. I just don't know how this one's going to go. I'm going to put it out there that this will be... I'm going to go with a boring 0-0.
2-1 Livingston. John Newbley, and I'm going to go for Scott Pittman to score for Livingston, and I'm going to go for Spittle to net for Motherwell.
So 1 each?
2-1.
2-1 to...
Sorry.
I should really be paying attention.
Newbley and Pittman to score for Livingston.
That's my fault. I should really be paying attention there. Let us know what your predictions are here. Patrick James Simpson says 1-1, a game, a few chances. That's the way I see it. I think if Kevin Van Veen isn't running the game properly, then I just don't see him being overly active in there. And when he doesn't play, I don't know if Motherwell really tend to turn up. So I think they could still do with another striker between now and the end of the season. The end of the transfer window. And it's just, I don't know. Give it another 6 weeks and I'll see how I think Motherwell will do this year. I think they've started well, but they could be a team that ends up tailing off. Robert Ingram asking, what's the odds on Motherwell? So Motherwell are 11-8 for the coupon. It's 2-1 for the draw, and it's 23-10 for the Livingston team. So we've gave our predictions on half of the games so far. We've got 3 to go with 20 minutes left. Thank you for everyone who is contributing. Please continue to keep that. Keep your comments coming. Give us your scores. We're going to head to Perth for the next tie, which is St Johnstone versus Aberdeen. St Johnstone 13-5 on the coupon this weekend, 21-10 the draw, and Aberdeen outpriced at 6-5. Now, obviously, Aberdeen, Dave, coming off the back of that 3-2 defeat to Motherwell that we just spoke about earlier on. But apart from that, the feeling in the North East going into this season was full of optimism, winning 4-4 in the Betfred Cup, fairly decent performance against Celtic, then that 4-1 win at home to St Mirren. Suddenly a few kind of awkward results, and people are starting to kind of think, is it all so rosy in the city of Aberdeen?
I was speaking to a journalist in Aberdeen Sunday. He was telling me that Goodwin was getting booed after the game on Saturday, which I find unjustifiable because, yeah, it's a poor performance and a poor result, but I mean, he's what, two defeats. One against Celtic, one against Motherwell last Saturday. Celtic was a result that you had to perform extremely well to go and get a result that magnitude. And then Motherwell, it's just a bad day in office. There's bad day in offices under Derek McInnes. Proof will be the pudding, but I think there'll be a lot more bad days under McInnes than there will be under a good one. But I'm going to focus on St Johnstone first and foremost, and I think they'll have a good idea how they're going to approach the game. It's going to be interesting to see how they get on. Andy Constantine, sweet Constantine, sorry, it's Friday night. I read something in the paper that they haven't been having a full focus on Jamie McCart at St Johnstone. That's how well Andy Constantine's been getting on at St Johnstone. St Johnstone are like how they've been over the last few years. They've been very, very good defensively. Obviously, conceded 4 goals last Saturday. That frustrated Carl Davidson. See, when you listen to Davidson in interviews or read stuff in newspapers from Carl Davidson, or indeed players, there's a different imagination about them this season. There's a different spark about them. They seem to be saying different things, and when they're quoted, they don't seem to have the same mentality they used to. And for me, I would find that very refreshing from a St Johnstone point of view. The big thing for me is their striker. Bear has been doing well, but will he score enough goals? That's the big question. Daniel Phillips, he came on after 4 minutes last Saturday, Colin, and had a very, very good game in the midfield, to my understanding. He had a lot of yellow cards at Gillingham last season, but if St Johnstone get that dogged approach from Daniel Phillips, that could be a good thing. There's been a lot of people giving him parallels to Jandrew Fuchs, who used to play for Dundee United, and Jandrew Fuchs was good in terms of tough tackling, getting in people's faces, and I think St Johnstone needs somebody like that. So that's obviously positive from a St Johnstone point of view. They've also got good players like Jimmy Murphy and Graham Cairn. They're a different post position this season. Andy Montgomery has even came on a game, I would say, in a St Johnstone jersey as well. So yeah, I think St Johnstone are a different side this season. It's going to be a different game altogether to what we've experienced in May. When the last time both sides met, when both sides were going through predicaments, there was no denying that at all. And by the way, Michael, we're waiting to come on to my beloved Aberdeen next, because I'm an Aberdeen fan, Michael. And when you look at Aberdeen, obviously Jim Goodwin is a big response and fast. I mean, last Saturday wasn't good enough among certain sections of Aberdeen sport, but you're never going to convince every Aberdeen supporter in the universe that it's going to be absolutely perfect on a weekly basis, irrespective if you win 5-0 against Annan Athletic, or if you win a dogged 1-0 against Celtic, just to give you a prime example. It's never going to be pretty from an Aberdeen point of view. The big question is, from an Aberdeen point of view, is Ross McCrory capable of playing that centre-half role continuously and constantly for Aberdeen this season? Because Aberdeen have been playing well with Anthony Stewart, Liam Scales at the back. Scales adapted to a left-back position last Saturday, and proof was in the pudding when Motherwell were getting into that areas, and the goal through Spittle came from that specific area where the ball came in Spittle, and Spittle just tucks it away with ease. So there's that. Obviously, there was a few under par performances, including Ramadani, who has been a revelation since arriving at Pittodrie, but I'm expecting him to come straight back in and be his dogged self. Clarkson came in. Obviously, they're a very, very good opening debut, but he would be the big question for me for tomorrow. Kennedy and Hayes have started the season well, but for me, I'd have Hayes back in the left back area, and I'd probably start. The big question regarding who's starting is a big one, but I'd start Duck tomorrow, and then have Miovski up front as per usual. I mean, if you've got Bajou and Kennedy and Duck on fire and on exposing defenders, Aberdeen are a joy to watch. And obviously, you've got Miovski that's there to score goals. Obviously wasted a chance which ended up to be pivotal in the outcome of the game last Saturday. But irrespective, I think it shows that Aberdeen are getting dangerous areas, but obviously not got the final touch or finishing touch yet. So a lot still to come, and obviously I think it'll be a good barometer tomorrow between both sides.
Yeah, I mean, St Johnstone are traditionally Aberdeen's bogey team. The last season when St Johnstone were going through that terrible run of form, they still managed 2 wins and a draw, as well as 1 defeat in the 4 games that they had against them last season. And that was probably one of St Johnstone's poorest seasons since they've been promoted to the top league. Aberdeen as well, obviously coming off the back of a poor season, but I think they've certainly turned it round. You mentioned a lot of these players there that they've brought in this summer, and it's certainly had an impact so far. I did think that there was still a bit missing out of that Aberdeen team when they came to Celtic Park, and I don't know if it was at the back or if it was in midfield, but something just didn't quite click there that day. And I think that was probably the case last week against Motherwell. Something didn't quite click at the back, as you're saying. When you've not got Liam Scales playing in that centre half position, when Johnny Hayes is missing with that experience at left back, you just wonder kind of if one or two injuries was to come about to that team, where would they end up? They could go from being a fairly comfortable top six team to some team that's kind of on the edge between the two. And I think if you're an Aberdeen fan, you can't really go a second season without getting into those European spots, considering you look at how Motherwell did, how Dundee United got the revenue in this season, how Hearts are guaranteed the revenue for finishing third. That is a massive carrot, I think, for Scottish teams, that you can potentially earn anything up to £8 to £10 million of getting into either the Europa League or the Europa Conference League. And if you're a team of Aberdeen with the ambitions that they've got, with the new stadium, with the kind of idea that they want to be pushing to try and break the top two of Scottish football, I think you've got to be targeting third as a very minimum this season. And I'm not 100% sure that Aberdeen are at that level yet.
I think I think last season Aberdeen, having the season they had, could, in hindsight, turn out to be a good thing because no, there was a transition season, very stretch of imagination. But I think it could allow Aberdeen to go and push the reset button. That's what Jim Goodwin's trying to do anyway. The results against Motherwell last weekend don't help Aberdeen's cause one bit. And then the Hearts will go and slip up against Glasgow teams. The Giants have had a torrential start to the season. It swings and roundabouts. I mean, Ross County had a torrential start to last season, got in the top six. So these things can happen. Ross County were a couple of games away from reaching European football as well. And you're right, European football is a massive carrot. If you finish in the proximity of the top six, apart from finishing six, you're going to be guaranteed European football, whether it's Conference, Europa, Champions League. And it's massive for Scottish football. Yeah, we've been a couple of failures, i.e. Motherwell and Dundee United, but the fact that we're getting much more European teams in the last few years, I think it's a great thing for Scottish football because obviously it allows for more exposure to the Scottish game, especially when we're speaking about TV deals such as Sky Sports at this precise moment in time.
Definitely. Look, I think Aberdeen should just about have enough to see off Callum Davidson's side on Saturday. It is a 3 o'clock kickoff through at the St Johnstone Stadium, McDermott Park. If you are going along, I'm sure there'll still be plenty of tickets on the door. I think Aberdeen's just going to take this one. I'm going to go with 2-0.
2-1 Aberdeen, and a yum for the Aberdeen fans and the St Johnstone fans because I noticed they were selling them.
A yum, eh? It was Empire Biscuits at Kelly Park on Sunday when I was there, but I mean, in that heat, nobody was interested in anything like that. Patrick James Simpson agreeing with me. He reckons that Aberdeen will win 2-0. Niall the Punk saying, I think Goodwin still has a season ticket at Celtic Park. That makes him a good guy. I can't disagree with that. Let's stay. 2 ties left. Where do we go? Let's go to the City of Discovery. Let's go to Dundee for Dundee United versus St Mirren. Dundee United on the coupon 13-9. The draw is 2-1. St Mirren 11-5. St Mirren still looking to get off the mark. So sorry, no, they weren't. They kind of beat Ross County 1-0 last week. Sorry, that was the big talking point. Sorry, I've just been totally flustered there. The goal from Tate last week, separating the two sides. They've got themselves off and running eventually after some fairly decent performances. As I said, that on the opening day, they were very unfortunate to come away without something against Motherwell, and then obviously that red card sort of turned the game against Aberdeen up at Pittodrie. They come up against a Dundee United side who obviously have had their European exploits. They lost 4-1 to Hearts last weekend. They've lost to Livingston as well. They've only got their 1 point for the season, and that was on the opening day against Kilmarnock. For me, looking at that Dundee United squad, though, it's far too good to be in the position that it's in. You look at some of those players, Jamie McGrath, Dylan Levitt, Stephen Fletcher, Tony Watt, Charlie Mulgrew, The one thing I think that's missing out of that Dundee United team, and we said this last week, is a decent goalkeeper. And if I was in the position that Jack Ross is in right now, I think I'd be just going out and seeing how much Sander Clark wants.
Very much so. I agree with Jonathan Berg in the comments section. It does feel like a must-win for Jack Ross tomorrow. I mean, if he doesn't get a result tomorrow, there'll be a lot of question marks getting asked, because when you look at the quality of opposition they're playing, and I mean this with all due respect, Livingston will be in the periphery of the top six, I think, this season. But Dundee United fans will be expecting Dundee United to go beat a side like Livingston. Even though I think Livingston are a good bowling team for Dundee United, especially in recent times. They obviously could be by Hearts at the weekend, which is a bit more understandable, and obviously they drew with Kilmarnock. So a lot of question marks will be raised if Dundee United don't pick a ball free tomorrow. You're right, with the quality of players Dundee United have, big questions will be answered. But you see it from an Aberdeen persuasion how they took in a lot of marquee signings and had a lot of good high quality players and still didn't evolve into a good side under Stephen Glass. It can happen to the best of teams. And when you look at the Dundee United side, I think it's important that they go and make a good contribution to the game. But also, I'm glad to believe they've had off the record conversations, not in terms of Jack Ross getting involved in me. It's been the players having conversations with each other, and I think that's healthy, because obviously Jack will have an understanding that the players are hurting from what's been a predicament of a situation over the last week or so. So there's obviously been that, but it'll be interesting to see the response. St Mirren will go into this game in a high. Metham's a big thing in football. They can go get a win against Dundee United tomorrow. That's massive. That'll be 6 points out of 12, which, when you look at it from a body's persuasion, it'd be unthinkable after 4 games. And St Mirren, I think they're showing progression, but at the same time as well, they've obviously the big question for me, Colin, and I'll put this plain and simple and blunt, is Declan Gallagher play tomorrow? Because last weekend you've seen how organised and compact St Mirren were. Yes, Ross County maybe aren't a side of Motherwell or Aberdeen, with all due respect, but at the same time as well, Declan Gallagher, has he been found out in Scottish football? I'd say so.
Well, I think he'll probably come back in. I think when you look at it, they'll probably go for as much experience as they've got. I know, as you say, he's not really hit the ground running this season since he's moved down to Paisley from Aberdeen. And when you look at it, he's someone whose career's probably over the last 12 to 18 months has taken a bit of a nosedive. Certainly since he got his call up to the Scotland national team. But I mean, you take a look at that St Mirren team. They've got a fairly decent goalkeeper. They've got Joe Shaughnessy. They've got Charles Dunn. They had Fraser in that back three there on Saturday. I think that's a solid back three. I could see Fraser potentially dropping out for Gallagher to come in there. And then you take a look at guys like Greg Kelty and Richard Tate, players that have got a lot of experience. And I think St Mirren will have enough to stay up this year. I think there's definitely worse teams than them in the league. But they do have to start getting the points on the board, and that 3 points over Ross County last weekend was massive for them. Dundee United, another team, as I say, they've only got 1 point. They're going to need to do something drastic and quick, because they've got some big games coming up as well. They play Celtic in a couple of weeks' time. I think they've got Rangers coming up soon too. On paper, they could potentially be the 4th or 5th best team in the league, but they've got to start putting the results on the board to show that they've got that quality. And as you say, Jack Ross could be under pressure if he's not very careful, considering the amount of investment that they've put in this summer. So, with all that being said, I'm going to go with Dundee United to get the 3 points on Saturday. I think when you look at it, the quality they've got in that team, it's eventually got to show through. I could see Stephen Fletcher bagging a couple of goals at the weekend. I think he'll end up being a top signing for them. And I'm going to go with Dundee United to win 3-1.
I think it'll be a low job encounter, Colin. 1-0 United.
1-0 to Dundee United. Let's see the scores coming in. Patrick James Simpson, United in shocking form, but I see one each. Jonathan Brown saying St Mirren for me to finish 12th. I can see it, but I just think they're far too good. I think they're too good to kind of finish there. I was at the Kilmarnock game, Celtic Kilmarnock game last week, and Kilmarnock, they've got a lot of stuff they need to get done. I'm still not overly convinced about teams like Motherwell after they go through that top run. St Johnstone as well. I think Hibs, St Mirren will probably be a bottom half team, but I think they should do just about enough to stay up. Now the Punk saying I thought Xander Clark was going to Stoke, so that hasn't happened. It hasn't. No, he's still a free agent. And Michael McDonald asking, is this show on every day or is it just Fridays? We are live here at 6 o'clock on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, looking forward to the games, reviewing the games, and obviously we'll carry on as we have 3 teams playing European football, so there's plenty to discuss midweek as well. You'll see that it'll be Graham and Glenn, most likely, on Monday, and anyone else within the team. We're starting to get some of the guys back as the universities get back and all that. Everyone's getting back into the swing of things. We're seeing everybody coming back from their holidays here on the state of Scottish football. We've got one game left to cover in a couple of minutes to do so, and it is Ross County versus Kilmarnock up in the Highlands for this one. If it's on the coupon, it's 11-8 for Ross County, 11-5 for the draw, and Killie are priced at 21-10 as the outsiders. Ross County, I've seen both teams. I've seen Ross County, I've seen Kilmarnock. To be perfectly honest, I think Ross County are the better team out of the two of them. Dave, I think Ross County have had a fairly difficult start to the season. Obviously still pointless after 3 games, but they have played Hearts, Celtic, and obviously they probably should have got something there against St Mirren last week. They've got this opportunity now to maybe put a couple of points on the board and show that Malky Mackay is building a fairly decent squad up there in Dingwall against a Kilmarnock side who, coming off the back of a 5-0 going on 6, 7, 8-0 thrashing against Celtic at home on Saturday. Sorry.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. I mean, Ross County haven't started the season as well as people were going to perceive it to be, and that's a big question mark for Malky Mackay. I thought last week, sorry, they'd have turned it around because, in all honesty, Hearts and Celtic were 2 tough positions, but a disappointing one last Saturday, and home advantage needs to be the forefront of Ross County's mind. It'll be an interesting one against Kilmarnock. Kilmarnock are a side that seem dogged, seem physical. See, they play Derek McInnes' way, which I can see why he does it because it obviously brought him a lot of success with it when he was in charge at Aberdeen. But the game's evolved, and for me, I think Derek McInnes needs to be trying something different. But you see it in front of your own eyes last Sunday, Colin, where Kilmarnock get hurt at every possible opportunity. They're exposed to every opportunity. For me, I don't think Calafity does it. I think they're in the park either. And go back on to Staggy's, I'll be 30 seconds on this one, where they're getting the good areas, but they're just not scoring enough. So it's going to be an interesting one, and one that will be very intriguing to say the least.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think Kyle Lafferty showed himself up to be a sort of shadow of the player he used to be, and that wasn't much of a player anyways. But if I was Derek McInnes, I would be fuming at his performance on Sunday. I thought he didn't put himself about properly. He was just trying to draw in the fouls, and he was trying to injure his opponents. And when he had the opportunity to take a shot, it was powder puff. It was a pass back to Joe Hart, and he curled one over from miles out. He let the fans get on top of him, and his mentality had totally gone. So he offered nothing for Kilmarnock. And when he's your main focal point, then what have you got to say? Do you know what I mean? Like, if they can't get anybody else to play alongside them, if they can't rely on anybody else, then it's going to be a long season. It was obviously his signing. Sorry,
I do like the guy Kerr McInroy. I do like Kerr McInroy for Kilmarnock, but he was obviously not going to make an influence against Celtic. But I watched him against Montrose for Kilmarnock, and I was very impressed with Kerr McInroy. But I agree with what you're saying as well. When you've got players like Ollie Shaw, and that's really it, you're struggling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they've got, one goal already this season, that's it. And it was Ash Taylor, in the 91st minute against Dundee United on the opening day. They're going to struggle for goals, I think, this season. And I could see them going down again round about that sort of bottom half of the table if they don't get someone else in. Because Kyle Lafferty, he got, 10 odd goals in the Championship last season. But before that, they struggled. And you could see why they were behind Arbroath in the table. That signing maybe changed that around for them, and obviously bringing in Derek McInnes, but they need more goals, otherwise they're going to struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just reluctant with time. That's why I didn't answer.
No, we have approached the end, but there is always time for us to give our predictions. I am going to go with Ross County victory. I think it's about time they turned it around. I'm going to go with them winning 2-1.
I agree with 2-1.
2-1 to the Staggies. Just seeing if there's any more comments in here. Patrick James Simpson agreeing with us. Malky to get into them. 2-1 to the County. Niall the Punk saying that Ross County to win. Great wee campsite beside the ground. Cracking Indian takeaway in the town. 2 or 3 decent pubs. What more could you ask for in Dingwall? And Jonathan Brown going 3-2 County. If that is the score, I'd reckon that might actually end up being the game of the week, considering what we've predicted so far. We've predicted victories for Celtic. I've went with a draw at Easter Road. Dave just went with the win for Rangers. I've predicted a draw at Fir Park. Dave fancies David Martindale's team to come away with the 3 points. We've both gone for 3 points for Aberdeen, both gone for 3 points for Dundee United, and both of us gone for 3 points for the Staggies. Thank you very much for joining us here on the State of Scottish Football on this Friday evening. We hope you have enjoyed that, and we hope you look forward to some cinch Premiership action this weekend. If you are going along to a game, then do enjoy it. Let us know how you got on. I'm going to be at Celtic versus Hearts. Where are you going to be this week, Dave?
The Scott Allen Show at Bro Queen's Park.
Should be a good one. It'll be interesting to see how he plays. Probably him alongside Nicky Lowe in the middle of that Arbroath midfield, but it could have easily been Aberdeen even only a couple of seasons ago, eh?
Yeah, absolutely.
So a big thanks to everyone who's tuned in, especially Niall the Punk saying great show tonight, really enjoyed it. Cheers lads. Red Scotland as well, superb show, thank you very much. And Jonathan Brown who echoes those comments. Thank you very much to everyone who has joined us. We'll be back on Monday night to review the weekend's action with Glenn Schroeder and Graham Smith. Until then, take care, stay safe and enjoy your cinch football.